Oops. I will not kick everyone out.
I was going to say you kicked everybody out. I don't know about an eviction notice coming back or not.
Well, I'm gonna jump right in, and then I'll kick it off. And if anyone else, well, if you want to start reading the next time, and then if anyone else wants to read after that, well, let's go from there.
Okay, yeah, just let me know when you're ready for me to jump in or whatever. No biggie.
All right, sounds good. Let me start sharing my screen, and please let me know if somebody in the chat is trying to get in.
All right, yeah, I got you.
All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, comrade.
All right, let's go. All right, chapter 15, World War I Revolutionary Tactics. The dawn of imperialism from the turn of the century brought with it the wars by the imperialist power, the capture of colonies. An example was the Russo-Japanese War mentioned in the previous chapter. This war took place because both Russia and Japan both wanted to control over Manchuria and mind you, I am not the best reader of some of these countries and people's names that are from Germany, so I'm going to say that now. Northern China and Korea. Similar wars for capturing and recapturing colonies started breaking out in various parts of the world. Thus, it became of crucial importance for the international proletarian movement to adopt the correct revolutionary position on the questions of colonialism and war. This, therefore, came up before the Congress of the Second International. However, opportunism by then had spread quite extensively within the parties of the Second International. Many leading sections of the parties in the imperialist countries had in fact started taking the standpoint of the bourgeoisie on many of the crucial political questions. This was seen very clearly at the 1907 Congress of the Second International, where the questions of colonialism and war were first taken up. On the question of colonialism, the leading body of the Congress, the Congress Commission, adopted a resolution on colonial policy and placed it before the general body for approval. This resolution, while criticizing the bourgeoisie's colonial policy in name, it did not reject totally the principle of capturing colonies. It, in fact, argued that under socialist regime could be in the, quote, interest of civilization, unquote, to capture colonies. Such an openly imperialist position of these so-called Marxists was strongly opposed by the revolutionaries in the general body, and the resolution was finally defeated, but only by a small margin of 127 votes to 108. Similar opportunism of the leadership was seen in the case of the stand of war. Bebel, a known leader and close follower and associate of Marx and Engels, prepared the resolution. The resolution, however, was first vague, without any specific direction of course of action to be taken by the members in the event of war. This, again, was opposed strongly by the revolutionaries, particularly Rosa Luxemburg of Germany and Lenin. They then proposed an amendment which gave a clear-cut direction to the members of the International to fight to prevent war, to fight to end the war quickly in case it started to make full use of the economic political crisis in the case of war, to arouse the people and bring about revolution. This was a continuation of the revolutionary proletariat position on war that Marx had already clearly laid down. Since the opportunists could not openly oppose this understanding, this resolution was passed by the Congress. As the war danger grew greater, the 1910 and 1912 Congresses of the International again discussed and adopted resolutions regarding war. They decided that all socialists in Parliament should vote against war credits. They also repeated in their resolutions proposed in 1907 by Lenin. However, the hold of opportunism over the Second International was so great that most of the leaders who passed those resolutions had absolutely no intentions of standing by these decisions. This was seen when World War I actually broke out in July and August of 1914. The German Social Democratic Party, which was the undoubted leader of the Second International, way. The trade union bureaucrats, instead of trying to rouse the workers against the war and for revolution, immediately entered into a no-strike agreement with the employers. In the party caucus fraction meeting that was held before the parliamentary vote on war credits, a large majority voted in support of the war. Only a handful of revolutionaries, led by Karl Liebknecht, and Rosa Luxemburg, Kautsky was at that time the main ideological leader of the Second International, voted to abstain. Thus, on August 4th, 1914, the German Social Democratic Party threw aside all the previous Congress resolutions and voted unanimously in Parliament to support the imperialist war.
Okay, comrade, your sound.
My sound went out?
Yeah, for just a second, and Sally's trying to get in there.
Okay, let me jump back and let her in.
Yeah, it was just that very last couple sentences on that page. It just cut out for a second.
All right, I got everyone in. So I'm gonna go back to where I was at, but basically what just happened was the wars that were going on. A lot of different socialist or democratic socialists voted against or voted for bourgeois wars, or they originally didn't vote for it, and then when stuff started getting sticky, they started to work in favor of the war, so to speak.
Did you get Thomas and Sally, dear? I'm sorry.
What was that?
Thomas and Sally are both trying to get in. Did you get them?
Yeah, they're all in. All right, let me go right back in. So basically, Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg are taking a stance against the wars, the bourgeois wars. All right. Everyone mute that, and then I'll go back to reading where we were at. All right. All right. So the German party was immediately followed by the majority of socialists in France, Britain, Belgium, and other countries. The Second International broke into separate social chauvinist parties warring against each other. The Bolsheviks were almost the only party to stand by the anti-war resolutions. In the context of the Second International leaders falling totally into opportunism, it was left to Lenin and the Bolsheviks to uphold and implement the correct Marxist position regarding the World War. I believe this is defeatism, but that in a second. What was their line? Lenin immediately published writings presenting this correct understanding. The Central Committee of the RSDLP gave a call to, quote, turn the imperialist war into a civil war and to build a new international in place of the Second International. Lenin started the process of building the Third International by uniting all the leftist anti-war forces, though these forces started holding conferences from 1915 onwards, much confusion continued. Lenin had to take up the task of clearing this confusion and establish among these elements the correct revolutionary position on the principles of socialism in relation to war, as well as the task of revolutionary social democrats at the international level and in Russia. Lenin did this through his various writings propagated both within Russia and internationally. The principles and tasks Lenin outlined can be presented in the following manner. Socialists are not pacifists who are opponents of war. Socialists aim at establishing socialism and communism, which by eliminating all exploitation will eliminate the very possibility of war. However, in the fight to achieve the socialist system, there will always be the possibility of wars, which are necessary and are of revolutionary significance. Secondly, while deciding the attitude to be adopted towards a particular war, the main issue for socialists is this: what is the war being waged for, and what classes staged and directed it, varying even to this day. Thus, Lenin pointed out that during the period of the bourgeois democratic revolution, Marx wars waged by the bourgeoisie against feudalism and reactionary kings. Because these wars were feudalism and establishing or strengthening capitalism, they were progressive or just wars. Adopting similar criteria, Lenin pointed out that in the era of imperialism and proletarian revolution, socialists will support all such wars that advance the world socialist revolution. According to such an understanding, Lenin gave examples of the types of wars that may be called just or progressive wars. 1. National wars waged by the colonial or semi-colonial country against its imperial exploiter. 2. Civil wars waged by the proletariat and other oppressed classes against their feudal or capitalist ruling classes. 3. Socialist wars for the defense of the socialist fatherland. Thirdly, Lenin pointed out that on the basis of the above understanding, there was nothing just or progressive about World War I. I think I just want to add this into it too. I know later on Mao explains about war or united front against fascism being just as well. He compared the imperialist war to a war between a slaveholder who owns 100 slaves and a slaveholder who owns 200 slaves for a more, quote, just redistribution of slaves. The essential purpose of the World War I was for the redistribution of the colonial slaves. Thus, there could not be anything progressive or defensive of just about the war. It was an unjust reactionary war. The only stand towards could be the call to convert the imperialist war into civil war. The only use of such a war was to take advantage to make revolution. In order to do this, Lenin pointed out it was advantageous that one's own country is defeated in the war. Defeat would weaken the ruling class and facilitate the victory of revolution. Thus, any socialist revolutionary must work for the defeat of his own government in the war. Finally, Lenin pointed out that and we could take a question, comments, statements, anything that anyone wants to bring up about this. I think this is a really important chapter that we just went over. I mean, they're all important. But has anyone got something they would like to add? Anybody? I know it was a lot. Did anyone understand what was going on? Like with the Second International, all these different socialist parties.
Right, whereas Trotsky was just abstaining.
I don't think there's a neutral stance on a yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we can do it. Anti-Putin, they confused Russia as though it was correct. We need to work for the defeat of our own. We proletariat of running ever side.
Imperialism. This happened at the start of the 20th, and it was left to Lenin to analyze this process. In 1897-98.
Sorry. Got a couple people trying to get.
Nope, you're good. I was like,
Oh, there we go.
Mr. Solo.
All right, let me get back.
Welcome, welcome, sir.
All right.
Paul Power.
All right, where were you at again? Just started chapter 16. I think you were Where are you?
I'm right there where I said, however, he did not live long enough.
All right, Howard. Okay.
However, he did not start of a new stage of capitalism, the stage of imperialism. Stevie's having issues. This happened at the start of the 20th century, and it was left to Lenin to analyze this process. 1897 to 1898, Lenin made some initial analyses of the development of the capitalist world market, but did not analyze the subject of imperialism in full. However, with the start of the World War I, a war caused by imperialism, it was necessary to do a full analysis of imperialism to understand the economic basis of the war and the political consequences for the proletariat. This question became all the more urgent in 1915, when the opportunist and the revisionist leader of the Second International, Karl Kautsky, wrote a book on imperialism where he argued that the world economic system was moving towards ultra-imperialism, where there would be stability and no risk of war. His argument was similar to some who analyzed globalization and argued that because of the growth of multi-nation groups, and corporations and the spread of their capital to all countries, these multi-nations would be opposed to war, and there is therefore no danger of a world war. This theory presented during World War I gave a false picture of imperialism, since such a false theory was presented by Kautsky. Well, what did you do? There we go. Who was recognized at the time as the main theoretical of Marxism. It was absolutely necessary to oppose this theory and present the correct understanding. It was necessary to clear the confusion created by the Second Internationalist and give the correct analysis and present the current tactics before the international working class movement. In order to do this, Lenin in 1916 did extensive research and produced his famous work in the highest stage of capitalism. Besides this main work, he also wrote many other articles linking this basic economic analysis to the tactics of the proletariat. In the first, Lenin tried to clear the confusion created by Kautsky. The other opportunists, what imperialism is. In order to answer that, then imperialism I lost where I was at.
Imperialism's right above where the one monopoly and capitalism.
Oh, there we go. Imperialism's descriptor is threefold. 1. Monopoly capitalism. 2. Parasitic or decaying capitalism. And 3. Moribund capitalism or capitalism on its deathbed. The replacement of free competition by monopoly is the fundamental economic feature, the essence of imperialism. Monopoly capitalism manifests itself in 5 principal forms. 1. Cartels, syndicates, and trusts. The concentration of product has reached a degree which gives to these monopolistic associations of capitalists who join together to crush other competitors. They fix prices, allot production among themselves, and make agreements to prevent others from entering and succeeding in the market. They play a decisive role in economic life. 2. The monopolistic position of the big banks in creation of finance capital through the merger of monopoly industrial capital and bank capital. During Lenin's time, this had already reached the level where 3 giant banks manipulated the whole economic life in the main industrialized countries. 3. The export of capital, which gains particular importance. This feature, which is different from the export of commodities under non-monopoly capitalism, is closely linked to economic and political partition of the world. Number 4, the economic partition of the world by the international cartels. At Lenin's time, there were already over 100 such international cartels, which commanded the entire world market and divided it among themselves in a friendly manner. Of course, this friendliness was only temporary and would last until war took place for a redivision of markets. Number 5, territorial, political partition of the world, colonies among the biggest capitalist powers. The process of colonization of the backward countries of the world was basically completed at the dawn of imperialism. Any further colonies could only be taken through redivision of the world through Okay, let's do the top sentence here. On the basis of the above features, Lenin defines imperialism in the following way. Imperialism is capitalism in that stage of development in which the dominance of monopolies and finance capital has established itself, in which the export of capital has acquired pronounced importance, in which the division of the world among the international trust has begun, in which the division of all territories of the globe among the biggest capitalist powers has been completed. The imperialism is parasitic or decaying capitalism is manifest in the tendency to decay. It's characteristic of every monopoly system of private ownership of the production. As compared to rapid expansion under free, the tendency for production as a whole to decline under a monopoly. Technological and new inventions and patents are deliberately suppressed, manifested in the creation of stratum of rentiers, capitalists who live with merely on the basis of the interest or dividend earned on their investments. Go ahead. Go ahead. The export of capital is parasitism raised to a high pitch as it means to open exploitation of the cheap labor of the backward countries. Fourthly, finance capital strives for domination, not freedom. Political reaction all along the line is characteristic feature of imperialism. Corruption, bribery on a huge scale, and all kinds of fraud become common. Fifthly, the exploitation of oppressed nations, and especially the exploitation of colonies by a handful of great powers, increasingly transforms the imperial world into a parasite on the bodies of millions in the backward nation. It reaches a stage where a privileged upper stratum of the proletariat in the imperialist countries also lives partly at the expense of hundreds of millions in the colonies. Imperialism is moribund capitalism because it is capitalism in transition to socialism. Monopoly, which grows out of capitalism, is already dying capitalism, the beginning of its transition to socialism. The tremendous socialization of labor by imperialism produces the same result. The basic contradiction of capitalism between the social character of production and the character of ownership. I lost my spot.
It's further intensified under imperialism. Thus, Lenin says, quote, imperialism is the eve of the social revolution of the proletariat. Unquote. All right. That was a lot to take in as well.
That was a lot.
So we could discuss some of the material. I like the labor aristocracy, which is like those who make a lot of money and live in the suburbs with gated communities. Yeah, they end up being the gatekeepers and protecting the interest of the bourgeoisie over their own class interests. But does anyone want to add into what we were just reading or expound on it? I know Tom's always good.
Can I chime in on that point, Chairman? Minister Rob?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's important when you talk about the labor aristocracy to look at the AFL-CIO. They have a big building in Washington, D.C., where these are the lieutenants of capital. Their job is to make sure that the workers don't become too upset, don't become too militant, and don't take to the strike, even though the strike been outlawed a long time ago. So the top leadership of the unions, I think, would constitute a labor aristocracy. These folks make 100 to 150,000. Some make $300,000-$400,000 a year, managing the workers on behalf of the capitalist class. So I just wanted to introduce that.
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's kind of sad looking back when unions were the strongest. Everyone talks about and basically how they got sold out. I mean, I don't know all the detail back then, but you can see what happened after the fact, and seeing that how there was a decline and the wealth disparity with the working class, how coming out of World War II and stuff, how there was a wealth concentration within the workers at a point when our economy was doing its best or at its height, when the cost of living was better and all these things, and how when that got broken up and how the socialists got kicked out of the unions and how socialists were being red scared, so to speak, and how everything started to go on to a decline. But it sucks because those who sell us out are the ones who really are just selling themselves out just for some opportunity to get themselves rich or something like that. And it sucks because that's who we got to watch out for, those opportunists, those who are abandoning the struggle. Does anyone else got anything to add?
Yeah, in regard to the labor aristocracy, I think it's important to recognize that the union membership has gone way, way down. And the number of jobs in those industries has gone way, way down. That they've been the hardest hit with automation, with factories moving to China, and that capitalists, having neutralized them, are picking their bones,
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of things that kind of ties in with all this. Even looking at, imperialism, these contracts that we have with these other countries where the jobs are not profitable to keep over here in the, imperial core. And it's better just to send them over there and you see what happens. And then it's less and less of those industry jobs. It's being de-industrialized, so to speak, and automated. But another thing I wanted to highlight as well that it's not touched on this material that we just read, but though a lot of times there was a lot of racism that was hidden within not even hidden, it was blatant within the labor aristocracy, where they would push racism in order to push Black people and whoever else outside of the labor unions, as a way of safeguarding their jobs, so to speak, like it happened in Chicago, where after the civil rights movements, they would blame people come from people coming from over, so to speak, and therefore they start pushing race propaganda and stuff like that as a way of getting the workers to fight each other. Felix, you had something to say? Got your hand up.
Yeah, I actually spend a lot of time talking to conservatives, and that's a big thing, is that a lot of them are bigoted, and it's a tool by the capitalist class to divide us. You know, they got us so focused on fighting a culture war that nobody's fighting a class war. You know, back then and even now, you know what I mean? Like when I was in DC on January 6th, and like I didn't try to educate anybody, but I educated myself. You know, I was just asking questions like why people were there, and like people were deluded as to why their lives were shitty. You know, and it's they use tools of bigotry to like divide people.
Yeah, no doubt, most definitely. It all ties into that too, you know, and a lot of it stems from fear. Like I'm fearful of losing my nice $50 an hour job, so therefore I'm gonna attack somebody who's like making $10 an hour. You know, somebody just has nothing to do with it. Yeah, for sure. So we could get to the next chapter. Does anybody else want to read? I can read.
I mean, I really don't care if you want me to keep reading. I can, or you can, or whoever can, or.
To the finish line. All right, chapter 17, and this is a good time to get in because October is right around the corner. So, chapter 17, the Great October Socialist Revolution. As mentioned in chapter 14, the period after the defeat of the 1905 revolution of extreme repression and reaction under the leadership of the Tsar's Prime Minister Stolypin. The working class was made the main target of attack. Wages were reduced by 10 to 15%, and the working day was increased by 10 to 12 hours. Blacklists of activists were drawn up and were not given. Systems of fine workers were introduced. Any attempt to organize was met with attacks by the police, organized by the Tsar's agent. In such a situation, many intellectuals and petite bourgeois elements started retreating, and some even joined of the enemy. In this new situation, change from offensive tactics that general armed use during the periods of the 1905 in carrying on the work of the party from combining work and the legal working class work. Open revolutionary struggle against Tsardom was roundabout methods of struggle. Legal organizations of the party as a maintaining connections with the masses. In order to preserve masses, the Bolsheviks made of the trade unions and other legally as charitable health societies, workers' cooperative societies, clubs, educational societies, and even parliament. The Bolshevik use of the platform of the State Duma of the Tsar's government to expose the liberal parties and to win the support of peasants for the proletariat. The creation of the legal party organizations enabled the party to pursue a correct line and to gather together forces in preparation for a new rise in the revolution. In implementing these tactics, the Bolsheviks had to wage a struggle against two deviations within the movement, the liquidators and the Ostrovets or recallists leaders who were Mensheviks wanted to close down the illegal and to set up a legal labor party with the consent of the government. That's all. The recallists who were from among the Bolsheviks may also withdraw from the trade unions and all other legal forms of organization. Only the illegal form of the and were against also went over a number of Menshevik worker organizations, strengthened the party and party conference of 1912 and constituted themselves as a separate party. The Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, the RSDLP, at this conference they assessed the rise movement, which was seen from the rise in the strikers in 1911. At this conference and at later meetings of the Central Committee, new tactics decided on according to the new situation. This in the workers. Was the daily newspaper, The Truth, which helped to strengthen the Bolshevik organization. By lance workers, 5,600 workers groups collected for the Bolshevik press. Through Pravda, Bolshevik influence spread not only among the workers but also among the peasants. In fact, during the period of the rise of the revolution, the solid foundation was the mass Bolshevik party. As Stalin quote, the Pravda of 1912 was the laying of the cornerstone of the victory of Bolshevism in 1917. With the outbreak of war in 1914, the revolutionary situation further ripened. The Bolsheviks did extend among between the warring armies, soldiers died directly of wounds due to epidemics caused by war conditions. In January 1917, the situation became particularly acute. Hatred and anger against the Tsarist government spread. Even the Russian imperialist bourgeoisie were wary of the Tsar, whose strong revolutionaries and industrial senators, Bolsheviks organized demonstrations in favor of general strike. As the strike movement gained momentum on March 8th, International Working Women's Day, the working women of Petrograd were called out by the Bolsheviks to demonstrate starvation in Sarda. The male workers supported the working women with strikes. By March 11th, demonstrations had taken the character of an armed uprising. The Bureau of the site called for continuation of the armed uprising to overthrow the Tsar and established a provisional government. On March 12th, 60,000 soldiers came over to the side of the revolution, fought the police, and helped the workers overthrow the Tsar. As the new workers and soldiers everywhere began to dispose of revolution had won. The Russian calendar, the victory of the Russian was February 27th, according to the Russian calendar. As was overthrown on the initiative of there arose Soviets of workers' deputies. However, while the Bolsheviks were directly leading the streets, the compromise of the Mensheviks and the Socialist Revolution, which was a continuation of the earlier Nordics, the seats and Soviets building up a majority there. Thus, they headed the Soviets in Petrograd, Moscow. Meanwhile, liberal of the Duma did a deal with the Mensheviks for two dictatorships: the dictatorships of the bourgeoisie, represented by the provisional government, and the dictatorship of the proletariat and peasantry, represented by the Soviets of workers and soldiers, deputies. Lenin, immediately after the revolution, Lenin, while still in Switzerland, where he analyzed this dual power, showed how the Soviets were the embryo of the workers' government, which had initiated and won victory in the second stage of the revolution, the Socialist Revolution. Their allies in this were the broad semi-proletarian and small peasant masses and the proletariat of all countries. On April 16, 1917, Lenin, after a long period of exile, and the very next day presented the famous April thesis before a meeting of Bolsheviks. He called for opposing the provisional government, working for a Bolshevik majority. And the right of nations to self-determination, including succession. In the following months, the Bolsheviks worked energetic according to the conference line in convincing the mass of workers, soldiers, and peasants of the correctness of their position. The Sixth Party Congress was also held in August 1917 after a armed uprising. The Congress also adopted new party rules, which provided that all party organizations should be built on the principles of democratic sentiment. It also admitted the group led by Trotsky into the party. Soon after the Congress, the commander-in-chief of the Russian army, General Kornilov, organized a revolt of the army in order to crush the Bolsheviks and the Soviets. However, the soldiers of many divisions were convinced by the Bolsheviks not to obey orders, and the revolt failed. After failure of this revolt, the masses realized that the Bolsheviks and the Soviets were the only guarantee for achieving peace, land, and bread, which were their urgent demands. Rapid Bolshevization of the Soviets took place, and with the tide of the revolution rising, the party started preparing for armed uprising. In this period, Lenin, for security reasons, was forced to stay in Finland away from the main arena of battle. During this period, he completed his book, The State and Revolution, and developed the teaching of Marxism and the state. While particularly the distortions of the question by opportunity, Lenin's work had tremendous theoretical and practical significance at the international at that time. This was because Lenin saw clearly the Russian February bourgeois revolution was a link in a chain of socialist proletarian revolutions being caused by World War I. The question of the relationship between the proletarian revolution and the state was no longer merely a theoretical question because of the revolutionary situation created by the war. It was now a question of practical importance, and it was necessary for the international proletarian movement and the masses to be educated about the correct understanding. As this revolution, Lenin again landed in Petrograd on October 20th. 3 days of his arrival, an historic central meeting decided to launch the armed uprising within a few days. Immediately, representatives were sent to all parts of the country, and particularly to the army units. On becoming aware of the plan for the uprising, the provisional government started an attack on the Bolsheviks. On November 6, 1917, eve of this Immediately the next day, the Congress of Soviets passed the Decree on Peace and the Decree on Land. It formed the first Soviet of peace Commissars, of which Lenin was first chairman. The Great October Socialist Revolution had established the dictatorship of the period. It was, however, a long battle before this power was consolidated. The war with Germany had to be ended. This was finally done by the signing of the Brest-Litovsk Treaty in February 1980. This too, however, did bring a lasting peace. As World War I ended, the victorious imperialist powers of Britain, France, Japan, and America started direct and indirect intervention and aid to the ruling classes of Russia to wage against the Soviet state. This war lasted until the end of 1990. The Soviet state emerged, but at the end of the war, the economy was in ruins. Whew. I feel like I did all that in one breath. All right, so yeah, a lot took place. You want to add in and have any questions? I know we're at our hour mark. But that was a lot. I know it was a lot. So has anyone got any questions or want to get into the particulars of what was going on during that? Kind of like there was a fight of power between the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks and the opportunists and the bourgeois. There's a lot going on. Anybody? I'm reading the comments. Fuckowski. Yeah. Yeah. No, for real. Like, and this is where we have to look at too. I feel like we have to always who sell us out, you know. And you've seen that the Mensheviks other social democrats were quick to basically abandon the bullshit the way I look at it. I mean, if anyone has another analysis on it, that's how the way I seen it. But I feel like even in like organizing, I feel like there's always somebody selling out somebody. I feel like the Black Panthers were sold out by communist parties back in the 1960s. And you've seen that, there was a lot of opportunist deviations from the struggle that I just can't help but criticize. I'm not going to bring up that name, but someone else can look into it. But another hour, if no more questions, concerns, or even if there's something that you didn't want to bring now, something that you think about later, feel free to. I know someone just entered the chat, but it's kind of too late at the end. But if no one has anything, what we read, I know it's a lot, then we'll just wrap it up. And see you Sunday.
Yes, sir. All power to the people.
All power.
All power commits.
No doubt.
Bullshit.